Good afternoon, everyone. This is Olga Reddy with Iowa Organic Association. Welcome, everyone, to our Spotlight on Organic series of webinars. Today's webinar is with Ron Rosmann, and we are so very excited to have you here today. Thank you, everybody, for joining. What we'll do is the format of the meeting will be as such. I'll go ahead and give you guys a little bit of background about Iowa Organic Association, who we are and what we do, about 5 minutes or so. And then after that, Ron will do his presentation. If you have any questions that pop into your mind while Ron is doing his presentation, feel free to type them into the chat box, and we will tend to all the questions about 10 minutes or so before the end of the meeting, and then Ron can respond to all the questions at that time. So yeah, there's more people trickling in right now, so I'll give it a 1 more minute or so, and then we'll go ahead and get started. And for those of you who don't already know me, my name is Olga Redding, and I am the Iowa Organic Association Education and Outreach Coordinator. I am in charge of, handling anything that relates to education and outreach for IOA. So, these webinars, field days, anything and everything in relation to education, I am in charge of. So if you have any ideas for potential speakers or things that you'd like to see from us, please email me, let me know. And then what I'm going to do, you guys, is I'm going to mute everybody right now just so that we don't get any static noise in the background. If you want to, you're more than welcome to share your camera, but at the moment, we'll just mute everybody. So I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. I'll tell you a little bit about IOA. All right. Welcome, everyone, again. Iowa Organic Association is a statewide nonprofit organization that was established in 2006, and we are committed to organic education, advocacy, and community cooperation. Our mission is to advance organic agriculture and food systems in Iowa. Our members are a diverse community of Iowa farmers, gardeners, food and farm businesses, advocates, and consumers who are champions for the organic movement. Our priorities are as follows. These are our top 4 priorities, which include education, outreach, advocacy, and community. As far as education, I mentioned a little bit, but we provide programs, expertise, and information to help expand and diversify the organic opportunities of Iowa. We just completed our Growing Organic Expertise in Iowa workshop that were aimed towards technical service providers, crop insurance agents, NRCS, FSA folks. We also created the first and only Midwest Organic Pork Conference and participated with some of the topics from last year into the Growing Stronger Conference this year. And we have organized on-farm field days, webinars, and of course have online resources on our website. As far as outreach, we connect with target audiences and the public to promote research, events, and resources that are beneficial to the organic community. As mentioned, conferences, trade shows, community events are a huge part of our outreach. We also have a variety of resources on our website, such as our event calendar, our listserv, and of course, if you haven't already subscribed to our e-news, please do so. As far as advocacy, we advance state-level leadership, policies, and dedicated funding that supports Iowa's growing organic industry. We develop relationships with policy leaders, mobilize advocates and stakeholders willing to advance organic interests. And as far as community, we encourage a culture of collaboration by connecting organic experts, stakeholders, and resources to strengthen Iowa's organic community. One of the big tools that we have available for you in PDF form as well as in paper copy is this organic resource directory. If you want a paper copy, feel free to email me at olga@iowaorganics.org, and I'll be sure to mail you a copy. Just give me your first and last name and mailing address. This resource directory was developed to provide organic and transitioning farmers a wide range of resources to help encourage widespread success. There's over 900 businesses in this directory, nonprofits, educators, and service providers, and it serves as a valuable tool for anyone and everyone that is interested in organic. Of course, as a nonprofit organization, we rely heavily on your membership. So if you're not a member, please consider becoming one. There's various support levels that you can look at on our website. Of course, if you ever have any more detailed or specific questions, you can reach out to Roz, our executive director, or myself. We're here to help you in any way, shape, or form. So thank you for listening to me here. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And Ron, if you want to go ahead and say a couple of words about yourself prior to starting your presentation, that would be wonderful.
Okay, thank you, Olga. Great to see Iowa Organic Association doing so much. And I know Roz is busy right now following the butcher bill, is what I call it, in the Iowa legislature, which would expand opportunities for meat processing in the state, which would we really need it badly. And I guess part of it is to create some culinary and cutting classes on how to do that, either through our state institutions or community colleges. So that sounds like a really good deal. So anyway, I see so many names that I recognize, so I really feel like I'm on the spot today. I hope that this presentation will be of value for all you people that have been doing it for a long time too. Most of you know what we do. We're out here in Western Iowa. Maria and I have, well, I quit using pesticides 38 years ago. And then everything happened after that. Now we farm with our two sons, Daniel and David, and their families. And our youngest son, Mark, as many of you know, works for the Foreign Ag Service in India, along with his wife, Virginia, who works at the State Department. So anyway, happy to be here and hope that I have something new to share today in this presentation. So I guess, should I start?
Yes, you go right ahead, Ron. And you may want to click back a couple of slides, since this one is not your first one.
Oh boy.
Or just
let's see. Not sure how to. Oh, previous. Got it.
Yes, previous. A couple more times. Yep.
Oh.
Previous, and then click previous again there. There you go.
All right. Well, some of this talk was done for the Moses Conference this year with Kathleen Dellett and the ISU Organic Program. So we were asked to talk about the challenges of 2020, which there were many, of course. A lot of you had to put up with the derecho. We were lucky, we missed it by 30 miles, actually. 30 miles to the east of us is where it really started, even though we did have some wind damage, nothing like everybody else had east of us. And then we had the COVID to contend with. And for for me, and probably for many farmers, COVID has actually not been the worst thing for us in terms of it's easy to isolate on a farm. It really truly is. And I like the solitude for the most part. I say for the most part. Uh, I also like to be around people. But anyway, everybody I talk to says, well, we got more work done because of the virus. So it hasn't been all bad, maybe in that sense. But anyway, this picture was taken at about in February of last year before the virus started. And just briefly, uh, there was a big challenge for us, for Maria, who runs our farm store, in terms of um, what sold and what didn't sell. Right away, we saw that meat sales increased dramatically, especially the first few months. Other things in the store uh, kind of tanked, but things like uh, Maria said, spices and food ingredients, food things you need for food preparation, all increased, which is interesting. Uh, Meat sales have continued to be very good throughout the year. And in fact, even if you had your slaughtering date set up for a whole year in advance, that was tough. It was even tough on us because we found out that wasn't even far enough. And so come July, from having it all done up till then, we found out that uh, we needed to uh, get more, slaughtering dates, and that was tough to do. So challenging on the retail and wholesale end, but not insurmountable. Just showing you there, in our store, Maria's been marketing our meat for over 23 years now, I think. And we have our own label for beef, pork, popcorn, and eggs. And just showing you what the label is there. Okay, now we're going to get into this past year's cropping experiences. We did an oat trial with PFI, Practical Farmers of Iowa, where we compared what we thought was our best oat varieties to what the Iowa State experimental stations indicated were the best varieties. So this shows, there's Daniel measuring the strips. Um, we harvested the center of a round, and I'll move on to the next slide. That was planted April 1st. I don't know if we're going to get out there that early this year or not, but I would say that in general, we like to get our oats and small grains planted in March if we can here in Western Iowa. And many times we do. In fact, last year we started with some of the other fields towards the end of March. I threw this in because this is something new we tried last year. Instead of moldboard plowing, uh, we used a V plow. And the V plow here lifts, it undercuts. And we were so happy with it. This one I rented from an organic neighbor, but I purchased one, and we're going down to central Kansas here on Friday to pick it up. It has 5 blades that are each 5 feet wide that undercut the alfalfa and grass and red clover. Last year it worked ideally because it was so dry. This year we'll have to see if there will be any differences. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time talking about hybrid rye. This is the field on April 17th. It actually had frost on it that morning, as you can see, but look at that tremendous growth there already by the middle of April. And there's actually a group of us, including Margaret Smith, who I see is on this call, and Tom Franson and Dr. Rick Cruz from Iowa State. We're trying to bring it more to the attention of ARS and USDA, and doing a real dedicated research on it, because it has such a promising third crop and such a promising cover crop that could do so much for sequestering of carbon and keeping the ground covered. And what we envision is having an early soybean that you could harvest by October 1st, an early maturing soybean, so that you can get this hybrid rye planted anywhere in the state by the middle of October. If you do so, you're going to get good growth in the fall, and then the idea is to harvest it, because as you can see, you're going to sequester a great deal of carbon and use up a lot of CO2 if you do let it come to fruition. And in doing so, you're going to have a valuable grain, and you're going to have a very valuable straw. And hybrid rye yields twice as much as regular rye. So there's that going for it too. And it has, I'll move on to the next slide. Here it shows it on May 20th when it's first heading out. The picture on the right is our Oat Trials there. You can just see the differences. Moving on there, we combined the rye on July 10th, and it yielded 90 bushel an acre, which was a good yield. Many people do get up to 100 or 110 bushels an acre. But one of the great things about hybrid rye is that it has good stalk strength, and it doesn't get as tall as common rye, so you can harvest it standing, and there's not a single weed in a rye field. It just knocks everything out, and especially giant ragweed, which is one reason why we grow it. But then, getting back just briefly to what we're trying to do with this project is to also then convince the confinement hog industry, for instance, that the straw could be used to move to solid manure systems where you could compost the straw and then, decrease the methane in liquid manure pits, and then have a valuable compost that'll improve soil quality. And so, you cover the climate thing from both sides, on the side of cover crop and carbon sequestration, and then on the side of methane reduction and carbon sequestration by building soil quality. So there on the left, that's where we are windrowing the Oat Trial on July 21st. That variety that looks like it's down and in the middle was the variety Reins, R-E-I-N-S. And next to it is Minnesota Pearl, which was the suggested variety to compare ours to. And the Reins is a short oats, and it actually was the highest yielding one, which is interesting because it looks like it wouldn't have been. Here we are harvesting the plots on July 22nd. We used our grinder mixer because our weigh wagon is broken, but that worked. There's Daniel on top. David's running the combine. There you can see on the graph the different yields. The rains were tops at 133 there, and Hayden's were the lowest at 119, but still very good yields in a fairly dry year with very good test weights. I guess what we're trying to show is that I don't know why for sure. I think a lot of it has to do with our years and years of organic soil quality, but we have been consistently able to grow very good small grains with high yields and good test weights, no matter what the weather is like down here in Western Iowa. And I'm not quite sure why. A lot of people just have a lot of trouble growing good oats. We usually plant our oats at about 4 to 4.5 bushel. That is to get the better yields. Now, if you are planting alfalfa and a hay crop, then you may want to cut that back to 3 bushel or less because of it can really, interfere with the alfalfa. So that's a consideration too, depending on what you want to do. So I wanted to emphasize, how do you deal with drought and how do you deal with the need for having lots of forages, because we have over 90 cows. So we always have about 225 head of cattle every day that need to be fed one way or the other. Now here it's July 2nd, second crop of hay. We had planted millet, Japanese millet, after the very first cutting in early June. And you can see these stems in this picture. I hope you can see it. And taller, that's the millet that has already grown that much and really helped out give us more tonnage in this particular field where we kind of had a poor stand of alfalfa to start with. Okay, another thing about this last year was that we decided, because it was so dry, we were going to build a pond. And it was a perfect year to build a pond because our wetland here was drying up. And how this wetland works is that we have a tile line that runs into it where the cattle drink out of, that is cemented under the tile line. You can't see it in this picture. It's behind, right behind it below. But anyway, we were able to drain the water away by having the bulldozer come in on weekends 3 different times before we actually dug the pond to channel that, keep channeling that water away and drying up the wetland. It really worked well. I'll show you some more. On the right is, after hybrid rye, you have the opportunity to plant all these different cover crops. In fact, in this field, we have grown 5 crops in 2 years. The year before this hybrid rye, it was oats. And then we had a cover crop of turnips. And then in September, we planted the hybrid rye. Then last year, we harvested the hybrid rye. And then we planted Japanese millet. And then later on, we planted it back to some hairy vetch and rye again. And we had some volunteer rye come back. So actually 5 crops in 1 year. Here it shows we're building the pond on September 21st. That mechanism on the left is our overflow. It's actually a controlled outlet with gates in it. It's a new technology that really looks good. We can control the amount of water in our pond by either inserting or pulling the gates. They're about 6 inches in height. This apparatus is actually 8 feet high, so we can get as much as 8 feet of water in the deepest part of our pond. On the right, we actually had 3 bulldozers out there, and we shoved that dirt up in a matter of less than 2.5 hours. We had the dam built. And also the beauty of this pond is we ended up not going through NRCS because their estimates were in the range of $75,000 or more to build a 3-acre pond. Well, we compromised and built a 1.5-acre pond, made it a little smaller, and we did it for a total cost of under $11,000. So we were very tickled about that. And you might ask us, well, why did we do this? Well, with the unknowns of climate change, we might be irrigating someday out of this pond. Who knows? Also, I wanted to see more wildlife. We wanted to continue to have a place where our cattle could drink out of, which we still have. And we're going to plant trees and shrubs around this, and probably switchgrass, which is a real good sod forming grass that will hold the soil. But we're going to try some other species of prairie grasses too around this to see how it works. But here you can see it was slowly filling up on November 20th. Now, today, we actually had to go down after the snow melt and pull the top 3.5 feet of gates out because the pond was already starting to slowly go around the overflows on the edges. So we got a lot to learn about how to handle all this, but it's going to be a very interesting project as time goes on. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how many birds we see. We've already had ducks, geese, and blue heron. We've already seen those 3 species on the pond. Okay, now we're moving on to kind of the heart of our fertility and soil quality is our composting operation. We bought a Wildcat compost turner already in 1983, the very first year. It's pulled by the tractor and run off the PTO. I'm really glad I bought it then because they are very expensive today. Back in 1983, we spent $7,000, and today it's around 70,000 or more. And I saw Jim Steffen's name on this call, and Jim, I just wanted to point out that I learned how to compost manure from your dad, Bob Steffen, who was International Secretary of the Biodynamic Association. And he taught me the art of composting. Here's November 27th of this year, composting. This was the 3rd time we ran the turner through. We actually created a finished compost here this year in December. and we compost nearly 1,000 tons of compost a year because we use so much straw in our farrow to finish organic hog operation and then in our cattle operation. We have red Angus cattle, as you can see here. We did this corn trial with Kathleen in the ISU program. We compared 4 different organic trials, and I might point out that I didn't really care for the numbers that were selected. We had no control over that. They were too early maturing, but still look at our yields. We had a high of 175 and a low of 164. This year, I visited with Kathleen about it, and we are able to get more full season varieties in that. For us, if we're going to get the highest yields, we need to be planting full season hybrids, meaning in that 107 to 112 day range. Ideal is actually around 110 days. These were all in that 104 or less days. So just food for thought there. We're going to, as I said, we're going to do this experiment again this year with probably 6 different numbers this year from 3 different companies, including Blue River, Prairie, and Albert Lee Viking seed corn. Here again is how we utilize cover crops and winter peas. We plant on the left are oats and Austrian winter peas after we chop silage. Here, that was on November 20th, and we got a lot of good growth out of the oats. And there was pretty good growth on the peas, but none of the peas survived the winter. The field is bare, but we're going to plant this field to oats, or no, actually to succotash, which is oats, wheat, barley, and field peas. And then we're going to we're probably going to cut this for hay because we're so short on forage. Then we're going to plant probably sorghum Sudan, and then we're going to plant hybrid rye in September and go through this 5-crop sequence. Now on the right, that's where we planted oats on our soybean ridges. We're ridge tillers, meaning that we sweep the ridge off with our planter and then cultivate and then build the ridge back up with our final second cultivation. So we try to minimize soil disturbance. Very happy with how this worked out this year. This is just that field there that was rye, and then it was millet, and then it was planted the hairy vetch and hybrid rye again. November 20th, well, there's something out there for the cattle to eat. And we fed the cows on this field all winter with supplemental hay. And now this spring, the rye is coming up again. So, and they're biting that down as short as possible. And then we're going to plant this field to corn. So our philosophy is let the cows spread the manure as much as they can. So we feed cows out in the field always throughout the winter. Even if the snow is deep, we still feed them out in the field. Okay, a little bit about climate. I do quite a bit of work in this area these days because I'm a member of the Climate Subcommittee, Climate and Resiliency Club Subcommittee of NSAC, the National Sustainable Ag Coalition. I'm the only farmer in this group, so I can have a lot of input from the farming side. How much time do I have, Olga?
Oh, you're good. You probably have another 10 minutes, but there are definitely a lot of good questions that have come in. And if we go over with questions, that's no problem.
Okay, good. Well, you can see, and most of you people know all this, the worst CO2 comes from the burning of fossil fuels in transportation and then in electrical generation through coal-fired generation. So those two things are, where the biggest improvements have to be made, and I think they will come now with hopefully what can happen, what can transpire in this new political administration. There you can see agriculture is estimated to have 9%. But one thing to remember there is that only covers the inputs after they are applied to the farm. So for instance, the amount of energy and CO2 that it takes that is emitted to produce pesticides and fertilizers is not on that estimate. And producing nitrogen fertilizer through ammonia, the production of ammonia through the Haber, the Haber process of where you have to, under very high pressure and very high temperatures, pull nitrogen out of the air and combine it with CO2 to get it into ammonia. Yeah, it takes a tremendous amount of heat and energy to do so. So I want to concentrate on methane, which comes in at 16%. We've been hearing a lot about this lately, that, Bill Gates is saying we have to get rid of all meat. And, he's proposing meat being produced from all vegetable materials. Well, do cattle deserve this bad rap? Well, I've been studying this. One reason why I'm studying it is I've been on the Climate Committee of Organic Valley for over the last 8 weeks in a row. We are coming up with a plan for Organic Valley's dairy producers and the meat pool, which we are in, the beef and pork, and then also the company itself in terms of what they do in processing and transportation and everything, how, what is going to be their plan for CO2 mitigation and sequestering carbon. So we've been talking about this. And I've been researching it and found that, of that 9% coming from ag, 60% of methane does come from animal agriculture. And of that total, then 60% comes from enteric, which means the fermentation and digestive process that occurs in the rumen. That in itself is very fascinating because I learned that in the rumen and also in our own stomachs, there are what are called methanogenic bacteria, and they're called archaea, which have been around for around 3 billion years or so, I should say. Not 3 million, 3 billion. They are the precursors to bacteria. They are older than bacteria. But if we didn't have them, we would not have any ruminant animals, because the rumen has to digest, in order for it to work, has to digest, be able to digest a lot of cellulose and lignin. And so ruminants in themselves have been very good for the planet and for food production, because they have been very efficient at producing food from plant material that otherwise would not be able to be used if it wasn't for the rumen. So anyway, this final percent is 3.2%. Now, if you look at that, 3.2% out of all the carbon problems that we have, that is not all that great. Now, and then you also have to look at it that confinement operations are in there with their, and the methane coming out of liquid manure is a huge, is a problem too. So, but it is actually the cow-calf operation where the most methane comes from. That part is true. And yes, methane is 28 times more potent than CO2. But what I've learned is that through management intensive grazing, that you can reduce that from that 25-year period, which at the end of 25 years, methane turns back into CO2. After that, you can reduce that to 9 to 12 years by doing a better job of grazing. And how do you do that? Okay, well, you decrease cellulose by not grazing mature species. You want to graze grass when it is shorter and more tender, because then there's less cellulose that has to be broken down. And then research is finding out that cool season grasses and legumes have far less problems with methane digestion or methane production. And here's an interesting concept. In Europe, you have meat and milk coming from the same animals. So that changes the equation for the better in terms of outcomes versus, inputs and outflows. And then maybe you've heard about the addition of amendments to lower methane. One of them is seaweed, red seaweed, red algae, does reduce methane. Also, the addition of some grain will reduce methane. The biggest question is, I can't quite read it here on my slide, but we have to ask how much CO2 is used by plants in growing, in rotational grazing, where the plant is eaten and allowed to regrow probably, whatever, 4 or 5 times in the growing season. So how much CO2 is being used up in all of that growing process compared to if you did not graze and allowed that to just mature and go to seed? I would think there'd be far more CO2 being used in by grazing. And then how much is sequestered in the soil? This needs to be compared to no grazing. In other words, just because Bill Gates says this is true doesn't make it true. So unfortunately, these things become so political in nature, and then you get the two sides fighting one another. But this is where we need science, and whatever true science, the science has to be true and accurate to figure this out. And I also do believe that we should be eating the dietary recommendations on the amounts of meat. If we reduced our meat consumption by 1/2 in this country, we would still be consuming 120 to 130 pounds of meat a year. That's what the dietary standards recommend. So that is an interesting idea in itself. Okay, quickly moving on to diversity certainly helps make this all work on our farm. We have over 50 fields on 700 acres. The fields are set up according to the contours and grass waterways and terraces and so forth. And we plant probably 15 to 20 species every year. And how to, the best way to keep the ground covered most of the year is to have different crops grown in different periods of the year, not just for cover crops or carbon, but also to break disease and pest cycles and, enhance the microbiology of your soils. So that's why we plant early spring annuals of oats, wheat, barley, field peas, and cool season grasses. And then we plant our late spring annuals of corn and soy. Yes, we need them too for income, certainly, and for feed. But then we also plant winter annuals. This actually was common rye. You see how tall that can get in that particular year. We cut it for hay on June 9th of 2014, and then we no-tilled organic soybeans into it on June 13th. We ended up, I was disappointed, we ended up with about 30 bushels yield. I thought it would do much better. And I didn't think we would have any weeds. We did not have any broadleaf weeds, but the foxtail, which must have been there, came through in August, and we had a pretty good stand of foxtail, more than I would have ever thought. But still, 30 bushel beans at $20 a bushel is $600 an acre. So you still can't argue with that compared to conventional. And then we also plant late summer annuals like turnips and millet, sorghum Sudan, vetch, radish, buckwheat, you name it. We've tried a lot of different ones. And then this is my last slide. We keep planting more trees and shrubs all the time on headlands, on terraces. And we want to move more into perennials, food crops, in terms of fruits and berry crops and nut crops. We have hazelnuts on this terrace, and we're just getting started with that. So with that, I'm going to close and open and allow some time for the questions.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you so much for this presentation, Ron. And if you want to go ahead and stop screen share, that'd be wonderful. So there are quite a few questions that have come in. One of them from Kim asking about the top 5 funders of Iowa. So Kim, I'll have to look into that for you. I don't have the answer to that question right off the top of my head. So I'll get back to you on that. And then let's see. Kim is also asking, why did you switch to the wing plow? Less erosion?
Less erosion. I don't know. I haven't seen erosion in our moldboard plowed fields because of the ability of water to infiltrate because of good aggregate structure. But yes, I'm sure there's some. Yes, for erosion and trying to not destroy as much carbon. Yes, ideally, I'd like to be no-till organic, but how do you do that with legumes? I know there's some people trying, but I don't think anybody's had any success yet. Roll. Well, I know some people are starting to roll hairy vetch, for instance, and I think that's going to be pretty tough. I've had a little experience with, well, actually quite a bit of experience with ridge till and hairy vetch, and I know that can take over a field, and but back in the 80s when I was doing it, I didn't know how to ridge till. I was still learning. Today I could handle it. But anyway, I guess every day now I think about how do I deal with climate and carbon. So that's one reason why I went to the V plow, hoping that and not knowing for sure what it's doing to carbon. But it's also a lot faster, certainly, as well, because I found out it pulls so easy. 25 feet wide uh, doesn't take as much power as I thought.
Another comment from Kim. He said, but selling off your straw is selling off your fertility.
Yeah, well, yeah, we don't sell off our straw. I mean, we don't, but other people that don't have livestock, well, I guess, just look at what Matt Liebman says. He's done the best research of anyone for long periods of time, comparing the conventional corn soy rotation to corn soy and small grains with a hay crop and with the straw. And that crop rotation with the added crop and the straw and the hay has always done better profit-wise than conventional. And that's in a non-organic setting, as I understand it. So no, you don't want to sell all your straw off, but you could sell some of it, for instance, if we could move this forward into the livestock industry in terms of getting the confinement industry to go to solid manure systems like I would like to see them start doing.
Okay, thank you. The next question is also from Kim. Did you drill or broadcast the millet into the hay stubble?
We always drill with our Great Plains no-till drill, never broadcast. We want good seed to soil contact. That's yeah, a Great Plains no-till drill is expensive. Broadcasting will work if you got moisture. If you were going to broadcast, then I always would recommend that you run a harrow over it or something, a packer mulcher or something to cover that seed up.
All right, thank you, Ron. The next question is from Gary. He says, NRCS folks don't like moldboard plows. Is your wing plow technique something they would like?
I haven't inquired on that question, Gary, but I think they would like that. Here's some food for thought. Back in the 90s, NRCS did a comparison on our farm with our rotation with ridge till and cover crops, with our rotation of small grains and hay. And their study showed that we had the same level of soil loss as a continuous no-till farmer. So we had no more erosion. And I would contend we have less, but they did not come out and do an in-depth study, but that was their estimation that our soil loss was the same as continuous no-till corn and soybeans with terraces and so forth. So mold board, and that's when we were mold board plowing. So I think, anyway, time is a big factor in this. The more years of organic, the better soil quality you should have if you have good rotations that include legumes and cover crops.
Okay, a follow-up question from Gary. Are your soil loss based? Will the pond leak?
Oh, will the soil leach into the pond? Yeah, that's a very good question. We certainly hope to minimize that because there is no row crops very close to the pond. We have grass waterways through our pastures on the two major drainage slopes. Although there still is, I will agree, there's a total of 280 acres of drainage into this pond. We will not be able to control what comes out of the conventional neighbor. And when there is flooding and these huge rain events, then we could have an issue. I guess we will have to see. We will be able to at least control the water by taking the gates out to get rid of it as fast as we can and control that. But it's still going to be an issue, I would suspect. Time will tell. Good question.
Okay, the next question is from Margaret. She says, Ron, was the cost the only reason that you reduced the size of your pond? Do you expect a lot of overflow base done to the watershed draining into it?
That is a good question. Here's how we are going to address this already. We only have currently one drainage tile going into the pond. We thought we were going to automatically hook up two other ones. We are going to resist that so that there will not be as much water from tile lines flowing through into the pond. We will have to see in terms of how accurate and successful our regulation is with our stop gates, stop logs, they call them. I just could not, the actual cost that they suggested cost was 75 to 110,000 because the 3-acre pond required the movement of dirt off the side hills and required a dam that was close to 1,000 feet long, creating a 3-acre pond. And I told them I didn't want to build a lake, that I couldn't afford it. And so we built this 1.5-acre pond with a 450-foot dam, long dam, 8 feet high, and did it so much cheaper. But that is a valid question. Time will tell if we did this correctly.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Ron. The next question is from Kim. Do you have a cattle feedlot for all that manure?
Yes, we have a cattle feedlot and we have a retention, it's called we have a structure that is a terrace that is cemented out with where the solids uh, accumulate, but we don't get much solids in there because we use so much straw in 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 our bedding, even with our finishing cattle, that the bedding pack keeps the manure in place for the most part. And what else should I say about that? Uh, our flow of manure water is limited as best we can through that holding terrace and cemented area, which has then an overflow in it where the liquids filter through. Uh, it's I don't know of any better way. Of course, we have to comply with the 30% rule of forage coming from grazing during the growing season on all our cattle. So we are grazing our fat cattle, if you want to call them that, from May 1st until into November as well. So they're not spending all their time in the feedlot.
Okay, thank you so much. The next question is from Margaret. Is that starting weight of materials or finished weight of your compost? I believe when you were talking about
The starting. Yeah, I would say we're starting out at between 1,500 and 2,000 ton. We're ending up with 750 to 1,000 ton. Now, I will say this as well. There are times when you have runny, sloppy manure that you cannot deal with. You know, you don't have the right amount of straw and carbon in there. Sometimes, yes, we'll spread it around on our pile, which ends up being about, a third of a mile long windrow. But other times, if the weather allows, we will put some raw manure on where we are going to oats so that we can get it done because of the time constraints, but also because of ease of composting. So if you factor everything in, I'm sure we're up around the figures I've given.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Kim. Ruminants, very good for the planet, almost like there was intelligent design or something, huh?
Yeah,
I guess
well,
that's kind of a...
yeah. Well, that's a whole fascinating study of how life evolved from helium and hydrogen. Unbelievable, but
yeah, and then he's also saying dietary recommendations by the same experts that told us that eggs and butter were bad.
right.
Bruce Fields has a question for you, Ron. He says, do you do any tillage after taking off your rye before drilling the cover crop in midsummer, or do you no-till drill the cover crop directly into the stubble?
Both ways. If we feel like there's too many weeds there's no weeds in the rye, so you don't have to do it. But if we're planting in oats, for instance, where we did not plant alfalfa or clovers, then we will do some tillage so that we get better and still use the no-till drill. But we will do some tillage there. Otherwise, no.
All right, thank you. The next question is from Margaret. She says, what is the power requirement to pull your sweep undercutter compared to plowing?
Actually less, Margaret. We put a 7120 front wheel assist tractor, Case IH, that's 175 horsepower. In with plowing, I could go, what was it? 4 mile an hour maybe. But with the V plow, I can go 5 to 6 mile an hour with less pull. I was amazed.
Margaret has a comment too. She's saying summer is a poor time to try to broadcast. However, due to the heat and irregular rainfall. And then
Yes.
and then her other question to you, Ron, is how do you prepare your field after using the sweep undercutter to plant corn?
We've been last year we dissed once and field cultivated once. Now, whether we can get by with just field cultivating, we need to experiment more on that. I'm always, you know, when things look really dry, timing is so important. I mean, when it's wet, you can, well, there's trade-offs, I guess. When it's really dry, you want to conserve the moisture, but you also want to be able to plant into a nice firm seed bed. So, running the field cultivator over that certainly helps on that regard. And then in a wet year, well, you got to think about packing the ground, and I don't know, it can be tough, let's put it that way. I prefer ridge till, whether it's wet or dry. Ridge till is the best scenario because I can always plant sooner, whether it's wet or dry. When it's wet, the ridges dry off quicker. I can get in there even if it is wet if I have to, because of getting late in the season. Or if it's dry, I can get in there early while there's still moisture. And I'm trying to plant soybeans and corn earlier than most organic farmers. In fact, I've been planting soybeans first now in early May if I can. And corn also. I like planting corn the end of April if the weather allows, because I've done so many trials through the Practical Farmers of Iowa that show the earlier I plant corn and beans, the higher the yields.
Wonderful.
Within reason, I should say.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that tip. The other question is also from Margaret, and she's asking, how deep do you run the V plow?
4 inches is what we aim for. And I talked to another farmer this morning who said the same thing, 4 inches.
Okay. And then I'm seeing a final question here. That's a good one to kind of round things up. But Tim is asking, what was your greatest failure on the farm and your greatest success last year?
Last year, greatest failure. Oh, soybeans did not yield as well as I thought they would, but I don't know if that was our own failure. It's just that it was too dry. We had a terribly dry August. Greatest success, oats. You can see 130 bushel with over 40-pound test weight in a quite dry year. We weren't quite as dry maybe as some. Every rain we got was timely, we had a few more inches of rain than a lot of people got here in Western Iowa. I guess we were very, you know, I'm fortunate and I'm very thankful. I can't control where the rain falls, that's for sure. Although now with, that's a good point right there, because now with a pond, maybe we will in the future a little bit on a few acres. And then this whole thing, when people say they can't control the weather, well, now we can say we can control keeping the ground covered, and we can control carbon to some extent. So that's not entirely true anymore about the weather. We need that. That's changing.
All right, and then I see that Margaret has one more question for you, Ron. She's saying, with less and less tillage and organic, do you think there is a need periodically to moldboard plow deeper than 4 inches to mix nutrients?
Don't know. Time will tell. Um, we only plowed at, well, we tried to plow at 6 inch, no more than 6 inches when we were mold board plowing. Now you could see, is there going to be a plow pan layer from the undercutting? That could happen. So maybe Margaret's got a good point there. Uh, Also, if we have a wet year here, let's say a wet spring, what kind of kill will there be on the V plow? Will I have to go in there and do disking to kill vegetation that comes back, like grasses and so forth? Or will they come back? I guess that is something we will find out. This is all going to be just like everything else we've done, trial and error. And I see a question here, when do we calve? We actually just started. We're supposed to start the 19th of March, but we have 2 herds, spring and fall. So we calve. I love fall calving the best. Fall calving for us means August and September primarily. Uh, Springtime means later March and April and early May. We we try to calve even now. Right now, today we aren't, but once this weather improves a little bit, yeah, we'll be out in our calving paddocks. We got 2 of them where we calve. I don't like having calves in the barn for very long.
Awesome. And then another question, another couple more. The questions keep pouring in, Ron. You're just so entertaining. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks.
Tim Brown is saying, is the V plow a noble blade?
Yes, it's a noble blade. The plow, the brand, I thought I could never find anything when I Googled noble plows. If you Google Flex King, Flex King V plow, then you'll find it. And there's numerous ones coming up for sale on Big Iron, for instance, but they have become so popular that I couldn't even. The last one on Big Iron brought $7,100, and the cheapest one this winter was around $2,500, and I should have bought it. But I found one kind of in the mid-range there from a dealer in Kansas. I didn't have to pay $7,000, but so anyway, they seem to be very popular, especially the 25 footers. But they make them in 3 blades, for instance, which a smaller farmer could smaller tractor would work well. Those would be, wouldn't have the folding wings. So there's all kinds out there, but you can find them most easily by Googling Flex King.
Awesome. So Kim has a comment here, and he's saying farming is the highest calling on the face of the earth and the one that will ultimately control the destiny of the world. And he says, thanks, Ron.
I couldn't agree more. I think the fate of the world and God's creation, which I believe in God's creation, but I also believe that God allowed it through evolution. I believe in a higher power, is what I believe very much, and a loving God. But if we work with nature, and if we have more farmers instead of less, we will be able to not only solve but improve our quality of life on this earth, and have a little bit of
Yes.
heaven here. That's what organic farming is a little bit of heaven.
That's right. And thank you, Ron,
You bet.
so very much for being willing to spread the word and share this with all of us and answer questions past the 1 hour, staying longer.
Good luck to all you farmers out there. Good luck, and have a safe and joyful spring, and get your shots.
Yes. Thank you, Ron, again.
All right. Bye.
You guys, just wanted to let you know I will be posting this recording on our YouTube channel. So if you want to revisit anything, you can find it on our Iowa Organic Association YouTube channel. In addition, for grant reporting purposes, I will be sending out a survey, and if you could please fill it out. It helps us obviously report to our grantors, but also know how to serve you best in the future. And again, thank you everybody for joining today. Ron, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today and for all you do for the organic industry. We are honestly so very grateful to you and everything you've done. And have a good day, everyone. Good luck.
Bye.
Bye.